Hey guys, it's David Jackson Jr., your Peak Perseverance Coach. Today we're going to talk about one of the most polarizing yet essential aspects of contemporary business, and that is the M word, or meetings. How you handle business meetings is one of the most critical factors in your success. And today we're going to talk about how to do that in an easy 3-step process that will ensure that you have seamless meetings and effective meetings time after time. I'm going to give you a little trick that's going to help you remember exactly how to implement and use this process. And what we're going to do is we're going to take our cue from one of the biggest folklore heroes in Mexico, and that is the matador. If you have ever been to a bullfight, when the matador deftly lures the bull in and the bull thinks that he's going to gore him, he lifts up his cape and says, "Ole!" The crowd goes crazy, crescendo builds, and everybody's excited. Well, we're going to use that same principle of Ole when it comes to planning business meetings, because there are 3 key concepts to remember in managing a good business meeting. The first is O, or your objective. The second is L, or your leadership. And the third is E, for expectations. What is the meeting going to be? So let's start with O. One of the reasons that people think that meetings sometimes are a waste of time is because there's no clearly defined objective. And as an effective business meeting planner, one of the things that you have to do is to ensure that the people involved in your meeting know what the objective is from the very beginning. In fact, one of the things that can be very useful to do is when you send out the meeting agenda or you send out the brief, whatever platform you use to do it, clearly state the objective of the meeting. It will allow people to begin thinking about it before they get there. If you've thought, well, it's going to stimulate them, it's going to have them come with ideas, and you're going to have a much more productive gathering. When people are drawn by a common purpose, and when they understand what the objective is, that's a critical step to having an effective meeting. We're going to stick with the letter O here because one of the other issues under the objective is the organization. So you want to make sure that you organize your meeting effectively. You want to talk about the important things first, and then you want to underscore those things as you continue throughout the process of the meeting. So you want to have your objective, then you want to talk about the steps to achieve that objective. And you want to also have a very keen sense in your mind of avoiding pitfalls and barriers that will derail you from your objective. So once you've done that, you've implemented the first and perhaps most critical aspect of the Ole principle of meeting management. The second thing is the L, or the leadership aspect. There's an oft-quoted phrase that says, "You can search every town, you can search every city, you'll never find a statue erected to committee." What does that mean? It means that people respond to leaders. People respond to individuals who give them a task, engage them in the planning and execution of that task, and then also share in the success when that task has been achieved. So you must lead in your meeting. You must be an effective leader. What does that mean? It means that you use the leadership style that's appropriate for the moment. So in some cases, you might be a consensus builder. In other cases, if it's a critical issue that really affects the bottom line or profitability, you might have to take a more dictatorial or hardline approach to let people understand that jobs are at risk, monetary benefits are at risk. Whatever the aspect is, however you need to lead, make sure that you have the leadership style that's appropriate for what your objective is. Whatever that may be, Make sure that the stakeholders in your meeting know that you value their involvement. And one of the ways that you do that is by carefully thinking through ahead of time what you need for them, giving them a clear action plan, follow-up responsibilities, and painting a picture of what success looks like based on the meeting that you've had. That's very important. If people don't have a common vision, if you as a leader cannot paint a picture that they can buy into and see their place as a part of that picture, you aren't going to be very effective. So that leads us to E, and that is the expectations. Again, when we go back to the planning of the meeting, when we go back to the objective, we talked about the fact that you want to let people know up front what the purpose of the meeting is, what your expectations are, and not just for the meeting, but what your expectations are for them to take away from the meeting and what they need to be involved in and implement after the meeting is done. One of the things that effective leaders do is they use meetings as ways to impact and to underscore their value. So for example, one of the things that's fascinated me, and I probably should say since I began watching Game of Thrones, is that even in empires, even in dictatorships, doesn't matter what the form of authority or operation is, people have to have buy-in. A dictator doesn't survive without buy-in. One of the things that we see today in the contemporary world is the royal family in Britain, and people talk about the upheaval that's taking place, and they talk about the Queen at her advanced age having to come in and protect the brand. So in other words, the Queen has to manage the expectations of her subjects. Sure, she's the Queen, but her power is not absolute, and it's not indeterminable if she doesn't continue to organize, lead, set objectives for the people, set expectations for the people. The monarchy is not going to stay in power. People are not going to continue to support it financially, culturally, or otherwise. So one of the important aspects is to manage the expectations not only of the meeting, but again, for what you need the people to do when the meeting is done. People respect leaders who value their time and who don't just talk the talk, but leaders who walk the walk. So make sure that your leadership style, that your management style, as expressed and articulated in meetings, is born of that. Be proactive. And again, a big part of being proactive rests with the organization of what you're doing, with the way that you lead your group, and with the way that you manage the expectations. That's very critical. And let me say this, because I think that it's important as well. Sometimes we go into a state of autopilot because we're so wrapped up in wanting to avoid meetings or not seeing the value in meetings. So I need to spend a minute talking to you about exactly what a meeting is. A meeting isn't just a group of people sitting in chairs in a theater, drinking lukewarm coffee and eating stale donuts. A meeting can be between you and one person. Say it's with a venture capitalist that you need to fund your project. That meeting becomes essential. That's the difference between your ultimate success or failure. So if you don't understand how to maximize that moment, if you don't know how to use the 3-step process that I've talked about today, which is setting an objective, being a leader, and managing expectations, you aren't going to get the money you need, and you aren't going to be able to carry out your project. So in that sense, that meeting is very, very important. Let's say that you're part of a cross-functional, cross-cultural team, and you're responsible for setting up divisions not only across the city or across the country, but across the world. Then making sure that you're able to communicate well, that everyone's speaking the same language, that everyone's looking at the same goal, That's important. So just go back to the 3-step process that I talked about. Have an objective, lead, and manage the expectation. It's simple, folks. It's not rocket science, but it's something that you got to practice. It's something that you have to internalize. That's why I've given you such an easy to remember 3-step process. Think of the bullfighter. Think Olay. Then it immediately comes back to you. That's right. I've got to set my objective. I've got to lead effectively, and I have to manage expectations. If you will do those 3 things, you will consistently manage meetings, and you will manage meetings well. The management of meetings is an essential part of your business success. And I want to help you to achieve that success. And that's why I shared this easy to remember 3-step principle with you. What are they again? Let's repeat it one more time. Objective, leadership, and expectation. If you will use the Olay principle, you will always be effective in managing your meetings. If you like this video, please hit the like button. Let other prospective viewers know it. Let me know it. And hey, subscribe to my channel. I'm going to be sharing all kinds of insights with you in the weeks to come, and I want you to be a part of my success.